The sun beat down mercilessly, scorching the valley of Elah, baking the earth to a dusty crisp. The air shimmered with heat, distorting the already bleak landscape. It was here, in this desolate place, that two armies faced off in tense silence, a palpable anticipation hanging heavy in the air. The fate of nations rested on the outcome of this impending conflict. On one hill, the ranks of Israel's soldiers stood frozen, their faces etched with apprehension. They were a people chosen, but fear threatened to consume them. Dread was heavy in their hearts, a suffocating weight that threatened to crush their spirits. Each man wondered if this would be his final day. Across the valley, the Philistines, a formidable war machine, shouted and jeered, their voices echoing through the barren landscape. They reveled in their perceived advantage. Their confidence was booming, a deafening roar that seemed to shake the very ground beneath their feet. They brandished their weapons, eager for the coming battle. For 40 long days, the standoff continued. A giant of a man named Goliath emerged from the Philistine ranks, his bronze armor blazing in the sun, a spectacle of intimidating might. His voice thundered across the valley, a terrifying roar that carried a mocking challenge. Goliath mocked Israel, daring them to send forth a champion. "Choose a man to fight me," he bellowed. "If he wins, we'll serve you as slaves. But if I win," he sneered, "you will serve us and be our slaves." Every day his taunts grew louder and more brazen, and with each passing day Israel's courage shrank, replaced by a growing sense of despair. King Saul, a man of impressive stature and royal armor, was just as terrified and paralyzed by fear as the rest of his men. No one dared to meet the giant's gaze, let alone face him in battle. Goliath, in their eyes, seemed utterly unbeatable, an insurmountable obstacle. The Israelites, consumed by fear, saw only defeat looming on the horizon, tragically forgetting the power of the God who had rescued them from impossible situations before. Their hope, once a burning flame, faded to a flicker, their spirits crushed by the overwhelming weight of fear and the giant's relentless taunts. The valley waited, silent and still, for a champion, a hero who seemed destined never to come, leaving the battlefield vacant of courage. Goliath's massive shadow loomed over the cowering army of Israel, and despair settled over them like a thick layer of dust, choking their faith and resolve. The people of God stood paralyzed by fear, unable to move, unable to act, desperately longing for a sign, a miracle, a deliverance from the giant that held them captive. The Israelite army was paralyzed by fear, held captive by the taunts of a giant. But into this fearful camp walked David, a young man seemingly out of place amidst the hardened warriors. He wasn't there to fight, not initially. He was a young shepherd sent by his father, Jesse, on a simple errand, to bring food to his brothers serving in the army. Little did anyone know this delivery boy would soon become the deliverer of Israel. He was no soldier, just a boy, seemingly insignificant against the backdrop of war. His youthful appearance belied the courage that resided within. Yet he possessed a strong heart and unwavering faith, a combination more powerful than any armor or weapon. He carried with him not just bread and cheese, but an unshakable belief in the power of God. As he arrived, Goliath's voice echoed across the valley, a booming challenge that struck terror into the hearts of the Israelite soldiers. His words were laced with arrogance and contempt for the God of Israel. And David watched in disbelief as Israel's warriors, men trained for battle, fled in terror, their fear palpable. The giant's presence seemed to drain the courage from even the bravest of them. Confused and bewildered by the sight, David asked, his voice ringing with genuine curiosity, "Why is everyone afraid? What is causing such dread? Who is this Philistine, this uncircumcised man, to defy the armies of the living God?" His words cut through the fear like a sharp blade. The soldiers, surprised by his audacity, told him of the king's promised reward, a great fortune and royal favor for anyone who could defeat the giant. But David cared more about God's honor than riches, more about the reputation of his God than personal gain. The reward meant little to him in the face of such blasphemy. His brother Eliab, overhearing the conversation, scolded him harshly, accusing him of pride and recklessness, questioning his motives. But David's resolve only grew stronger in the face of criticism. He would not be deterred from his purpose. He knew with unwavering certainty that he was there for a reason, that God had orchestrated his arrival for this very moment. David's spirit burned with righteous anger at Goliath's insults, at the giant's defiance of the living God. He could not stand idly by while God's name was mocked. He believed with every fiber of his being that someone had to stand up for God, and he was willing, even eager, to be that person. The camp buzzed with talk of the bold shepherd boy, this unlikely challenger who dared to question the fear that gripped the army. David's unwavering faith set him apart, a beacon of courage amidst a sea of trembling soldiers. He was ready to face the giant, armed with nothing but his faith and a shepherd's staff. News of David's bold declaration reached King Saul, stirring a mix of curiosity and desperation within him. Eager to assess this unlikely challenger, Saul summoned the boy to his presence. The fate of his kingdom might hang in the balance. Saul, a seasoned warrior himself, couldn't help but doubt David's chances. "You're just a youth," he exclaimed, his voice laced with concern. "Goliath is a seasoned warrior, a giant of a man who has known battle since his youth." The king's words painted a grim picture of the challenge ahead, but David, undeterred by the king's skepticism, replied with unwavering conviction, "I've fought lions and bears," he continued, his voice resonating with the strength of his past trials. "I've risked my life to protect my sheep, defending them from predators with all my might. God delivered me then. He was my shield and my strength in those moments of peril. And because he was faithful then, I know he'll deliver me now," David declared, his eyes shining with unwavering faith. David's confidence came not from physical strength or battle experience, but from an unshakable trust in God's power, a power that transcended the limitations of human ability. He remembered God's faithfulness in the wilderness, the countless times he had intervened to protect him and his flock. David believed that the same divine power that had sustained him then would not fail him now in this moment of national crisis. "The Lord who rescued me before from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me again from the hand of this Philistine," David declared with unwavering conviction. Saul, witnessing the depth of David's faith, saw a glimmer of hope ignite within his own heart. And with a mix of hope and trepidation, Saul agreed, "Go, and may the Lord be with you." The king, recognizing that earthly armor was no match for the power of faith, set aside his own battle gear. He placed his trust not in military might, but in the courage and unwavering faith of a simple shepherd. David's faith shone brighter than any weapon forged in the fires of war, a beacon of hope in the face of overwhelming odds. The fate of Israel, the hopes and dreams of an entire nation, now rested on the shoulders of a boy and his unwavering trust in God. The impossible was about to be challenged not by might but by faith. Saul dressed David in heavy armor, but it weighed him down. David removed it, choosing instead his staff, sling, and 5 smooth stones from the stream. He faced Goliath with only what he knew, and with faith. Goliath sneered at the sight of the boy, mocking, "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" The giant cursed David, certain of victory. But David stood firm, unshaken by threats or size. He answered not with bravado, but with faith in God. The armies watched, breathless, as the shepherd boy faced the giant. David's courage was not in his weapon, but in his God. The valley was silent, the moment electric. 2 champions stood ready, one in armor, one in faith. The battle for Israel's future was about to begin. David called out, "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." He declared victory before the battle began, certain God would deliver. Goliath advanced, furious, but David ran toward him, not away. He reached into his bag, took a stone, and placed it in his sling. With practiced skill, he hurled the stone at the giant. The stone struck Goliath's forehead, the only unprotected spot. The giant staggered, then crashed to the ground. The impossible had happened. Goliath was defeated by a single stone. David stood over the fallen champion, victorious. The Philistines' pride turned to panic. Israel's fear turned to triumph. The valley echoed with the sound of victory. God's power had been revealed for all to see. Silence fell as both armies stared in disbelief. David, without a sword, used Goliath's own weapon to finish the battle. The Philistines fled, their courage shattered. Israel's army surged forward, chasing their enemies and claiming victory. The camp erupted in celebration, fear replaced by joy. David was hailed as a hero, but he knew the victory belonged to God. The people rejoiced, singing, "Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands." This victory was more than a battle won. It was a turning point for Israel. The nation's faith was restored by a shepherd's trust. God had saved his people not by might, but by faith. David's courage inspired a nation to believe again. The story of the valley would be told for generations. A shepherd boy had changed the fate of Israel. The story of David and Goliath is a lesson in true strength. Israel saw an unbeatable giant. David saw an opportunity for God's power. David's courage came from faith, not fearlessness. He remembered God's past help and trusted him for the future. We all face giants, problems that seem impossible. Like David, we can choose faith over fear. The victory belongs to God. We are simply his instruments. This story calls us to step out in faith, even when we feel small. With God, no challenge is too great. Trust in the Lord and he will lead you to victory.